At my high school graduation, my father stood up, and the words he said next made the entire gym go silent. I was sitting with the other graduates in the front row, my cap slightly crooked, my palms sweating as I clutched the edges of my gown. My name was close to the end of the list, so I had been watching other parents cheer, wave, and wipe tears as their kids crossed the stage. I imagined him clapping, maybe giving me a small nod, the closest thing to pride Grant ever allowed himself to show. Grant Whitaker was the kind of man people in Seattle respected. He owned a construction business, donated to local politicians, and always had a polished smile for church on Sundays. But at home, that smile never reached me. At home, he reminded me that I should be grateful he and Ellen had taken me in when I was 3, that I owed him everything, that without him I would have been nothing. I swallowed hard, twisting the graduation ring on my finger, a gift from Ellen before she died. She would have been here smiling, reminding me I earned this. She would have told me I was enough. The principal called another name, and a boy 2 seats down stood up, jogging to the stage as his family cheered wildly. I smiled politely, clapping along, but my stomach was tight, a dull ache of nerves and hope. Then I heard my name. Madison Whitaker. My heart skipped as I pushed myself up, smoothing my gown. This was it. 4 years of AP classes, part-time jobs, and late nights studying while helping take care of Caleb, all for this moment. That was when Grant stood up in the 4th row. He didn't smile, he didn't clap. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders back, chin lifted, like he was giving a speech to a boardroom. For a second, I thought he would say something encouraging, something fatherly. "She is not my daughter." Grant's voice boomed across the gym. It was like the world froze. The principal's hand paused mid-clap. A baby in the back row stopped crying. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Grant took a step forward, his voice steady, cold, loud enough for everyone to hear. "From this day forward, Madison, you will get no more support from me. No college fund, no help, no family connection." The whispers started immediately, sharp gasps slicing through the heavy air. Phones lifted, recording, capturing the moment my life split in two. I couldn't breathe. My knees trembled, and for a moment I thought I might collapse. I looked around, seeing faces I had known since kindergarten, staring, pitying, judging. Rachel, Grant's wife, sat beside him, her eyes wide, one hand over her mouth, the other holding Caleb, who squirmed on her lap. She whispered something to Grant, tugging at his sleeve, but he ignored her. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted me to beg. He wanted me to crumble, to cry, to prove him right, that I was ungrateful and weak, that I needed him to survive. The principal cleared his throat, glancing at me as if asking if I wanted to keep walking to the stage. The microphone was still on, the silence crushing. I tightened my grip on the folder in my hand, the edges pressing into my palm, reminding me that I was still here, still standing. Grant's face was hard, but there was a flicker in his eyes. He thought he won. I took a breath, lifted my chin, and looked him straight in the eye. He had no idea what I was capable of. I stepped forward, each movement steady, measured, my mind clearing as I realized he had just given me the stage I needed, and he would regret every word he just said. My hands started to shake, but I forced them, still clutching the folder tighter until my knuckles turned white. The tassel on my cap brushed against my cheek as I turned my head, scanning the rows of shocked faces. My best friend Harper was frozen a few seats away, her mouth open, her phone clutched in her hand, not even recording, just staring. Rachel's face was pale, her perfectly done hair trembling as she whispered again, louder this time. "Grant, please, not here. Please." But Grant didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on me, like he was daring me to challenge him. The principal cleared his throat, leaning toward the microphone, trying to salvage the moment. "Madison Whitaker, please proceed to the stage." I could hear someone in the back row mutter. "What the hell just happened?" Another voice whispered. "Is she really adopted? Why would he do that now?" A hot flush crept up my neck, but I held my ground. The entire gym smelled of old wood polish and perfume, a scent I had always associated with assemblies and school dances, now burned into my memory for a different reason. Grant slowly sat down, crossing his arms, leaning back like he was satisfied with himself, like he had delivered the final blow. Caleb fussed in Rachel's lap, letting out a small whimper that echoed in the silence. I could have run. I could have turned around, hidden behind the curtains, let the tears welling up in my eyes spill over. But I didn't. I took one step forward. Then another. I could hear my heart pounding, but each step made me feel stronger, like I was reclaiming the space he tried to take from me. I reached the steps leading up to the stage, placing my foot carefully on the first one, feeling the wood creak under my weight. The principal looked at me, his eyes kind but filled with pity, and I hated it. I didn't need pity. I needed to remember who I was. Madison Whitaker, the girl who pulled straight. As while working weekends at the bookstore to save up for college, who helped Rachel with Caleb's midnight feedings when she claimed she was too tired, who stayed late after school to tutor other students for volunteer credits that wouldn't matter now if Grant truly cut me off. I reached the top of the steps, standing on the stage as the lights hit me, making me blink. The microphone was there waiting, still warm from the last student's polite thank you speech. My name echoed in the air, a reminder of who I was supposed to be, who I still was, even if Grant didn't want me. Madison Whitaker. I looked down and saw him sitting there, arms crossed, eyes cold, a small satisfied smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. I tightened my grip on the folder again, feeling the edges bite into my skin, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. That I had prepared for the day he would try to break me. And he picked today. In front of everyone. He thought I would crumble. He thought I would beg. But instead, I lifted my chin, letting the silence stretch as I stood there, letting every eye in the gym see me, really see me for the first time. And I knew at that moment that Grant Whitaker had just given me exactly what I needed. He had given me a stage, and soon he would wish he had never spoken those words. I forced my feet to move across the stage, each step heavy, my shoes clicking against the polished wood that now felt like it might crack under me. The folder in my hands was warm from how tight I had been gripping it, the paper inside, bending under the pressure. The gym was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner humming, and somewhere in the back a phone dropped, the clatter, making me flinch. Harper's voice finally broke the silence, small and shaky. "Maddie, you got this." I didn't look at her, but I felt the heat in my eyes soften for a second. Then I looked back at Grant, who was now leaning back in his seat, arms crossed, like he had just won some twisted game. "Come on, Madison," the principal said softly, trying to keep the ceremony moving. I stepped up to him, my hands trembling as I reached for the diploma. His fingers brushed mine, and he squeezed my hand for a second, his eyes sad. "Congratulations," he whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice, turning toward the camera that was snapping pictures for parents to buy later. I tried to smile, but it felt wrong, too heavy for my face. Flashes popped as the camera clicked, capturing the moment I was supposed to remember forever. Instead, I knew I would remember Grant's words more than any of this. I took a step down, my shoes slipping a little, but I caught myself. The applause was scattered, confused, some parents clapping politely, others staying silent, their eyes wide, some whispering to each other. "She's not his daughter," one woman hissed to her husband. "Why would he say that now?" someone else muttered. I kept walking, my head high, even though my chest felt like it was about to crack open. The folder pressed against my ribs, reminding me of the letter I kept from Ellen, the one she wrote before she died, telling me I was wanted, chosen, and loved. Rachel was trying to calm Caleb, who had started crying again, his small hands grabbing at her necklace, yanking it hard enough to snap the chain. The pearls scattered on the floor, rolling under chairs, but Rachel didn't notice. She was staring at Grant, her mouth moving as she tried to get him to look at her, but he didn't. He was too busy watching me, that cold, empty look on his face, like he had finally gotten rid of a problem. My feet moved on autopilot toward the row where the graduates were sitting, but instead of taking my seat, I stopped. I turned around. I looked at Grant, at Rachel, at the teachers who were pretending they didn't hear what just happened, at the parents who were holding their kids a little tighter, at the classmates who were staring at me with wide, unsure eyes. I lifted my chin. And I smiled. Not a big smile, but enough. Because in that moment I realized he had just set me free. All the years of him reminding me I owed him, that I should be grateful that I wasn't really his, all the times he made me feel small, erased in one moment. Because now everyone knew. And I didn't have to hide anymore. I walked back to my seat, the whispers following me, people pulling out their phones, probably texting about what just happened. I sat down, the plastic chair, cold, the metal legs squeaking under me. Harper leaned in, her eyes wet. "Maddie, what are you going to do?" she whispered. I looked down at the folder, running my thumb along the edge, feeling the weight of the papers inside. I turned to Harper, letting the corner of my mouth lift. "I'm going to give him exactly what he wants," I said. She frowned. "What does that mean?" I looked back at Grant, who was staring at the stage, pretending like nothing happened, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on my life. "It means he wants the world to know I'm not his," I said quietly. "So I'll show the world who he really is." Harper's eyes widened, but she didn't say anything else. The principal started calling the next name, the ceremony moving on like it was supposed to, but the air felt charged electric, like everyone was waiting for what would happen next, and so was I. Because I knew that this was just the beginning. He wanted to humiliate me, he wanted to break me, but he had no idea that he had just handed me the stage. And I was ready to use it. What would you have done if you were me? Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. You think I grew up in a perfect family? Let me tell you the truth. I was 3 when Ellen came into my life carrying a stuffed elephant and a soft blanket the day she brought me home from foster care. I remember her hair smelled like vanilla and that she hummed when she did the dishes. She would kneel down, look me in the eye, and say, "Madison, you are wanted. Don't let anyone ever make you feel small." Those words stuck with me because even then I knew Grant didn't feel the same. He would pat me on the head like I was a dog, nodding at social workers, saying, "We're grateful to give her a home." His smile never reached his eyes. Ellen made it feel like home, though. She baked chocolate chip cookies on Fridays, sat with me while I did homework, and read to me every night. She made me feel like I belonged even when Grant stood in the doorway, arms crossed, reminding me with his silence that I wasn't really his. When I was 11, Ellen got sick. At first it was just naps in the middle of the day, then trips to the hospital that felt longer every time. I would sit in the corner of her hospital room coloring quietly while the machines beeped. One night she held my hand and said, "Madison, promise me you'll remember how loved you are." I nodded, but I didn't understand she was saying goodbye. She died a week before my 14th birthday. Grant cried at her funeral, real tears that made his shoulders shake. I thought maybe, just maybe, we would get closer, that we could miss her together. But when I tried to hug him in the kitchen the day after the funeral, he froze, then stepped away, telling me, "We need to be strong now." Being strong meant he buried himself in work, coming home late, avoiding the empty seat at the dinner table. I started eating alone, microwaving leftover casseroles neighbors had brought. It was 6 months later when he brought Rachel home. She was everything Ellen wasn't. Rachel wore heels around the house and kept her nails perfect. Her laugh was loud and bright, and she would take selfies while holding a cup of coffee, posting captions like "Blessed to be a bonus mom." She tried to win me over at first, calling me sweetheart and buying me clothes that never fit right, saying, "You need to look more put together." But the warmth was fake, like the way she always smiled wider when Grant walked into the room. Within a year, Rachel and Grant got married in a small ceremony, photos of them standing in front of a courthouse in downtown Seattle. Rachel's white dress tight around her growing belly. She was pregnant, and Grant's eyes glowed in those photos in a way they never had with me. Caleb was born in the spring, a healthy baby with big brown eyes and a loud cry. Grant held him like he was holding his whole world, rocking him in the middle of the living room while Rachel took videos for Instagram. "Look at him, Maddie," Rachel said once, showing me a video of Grant kissing Caleb's forehead. "Isn't your brother precious?" Brother. The word tasted strange in my mouth. I would nod, forcing a smile, then escape to my room, pulling out Ellen's old sweater, holding it close, breathing in the faded scent of her perfume. The months turned into a routine. Grant would come home early now, playing with Caleb, while Rachel recorded it all for her followers, captioning everything with "number blessed" and "number family first." They would take family photos with matching outfits, Grant's arm around Rachel, Caleb in the middle, and me standing at the side, a prop they forgot to crop out. Rachel started dropping hints saying, "You'll be 18 soon, Madison. Have you thought about your next steps?" Or, "We're so proud you're independent." Independent. That was code for "we want you gone." I started noticing Rachel's phone lighting up late at night, messages she would hide when Grant walked by. She would leave for appointments that lasted hours, coming back with shopping bags and a fake smile. Sometimes I would catch her reflection in the mirror, her smile gone, replaced with a hard, cold look I didn't recognize. And I started to wonder about the messages, about the meetings, about Caleb. I didn't know it yet, but the perfect family they were showing the world was about to crumble. And it would crumble on the very day they tried to destroy me. It started small the way most things do. A glance from Rachel toward her phone when it buzzed across the kitchen counter, her fingers moving too fast as she slid it away. The way she would say, "I need to get my nails done," and disappear for hours, returning with the faint smell of hotel soap on her clothes. Grant never noticed. Or maybe he chose not to. He would bounce Caleb in his arms, kissing the top of his head, telling him stories about baseball games and fishing trips they would take one day. I would watch from the doorway, the same doorway where I once stood, hoping he would notice me the way he noticed Caleb. One night, I came downstairs for water and Rachel was in the living room whispering into her phone. I know, but he's getting suspicious," she said, pacing near the window. "You can't keep texting so late." She froze when she saw me standing there, the refrigerator light shining on my face. Her smile snapped on like a switch. "Oh, Maddie couldn't sleep," she said, her voice too bright, too fake. I nodded, glancing at her phone as she turned it face down on the coffee table. "Good night," I said, heading back upstairs, but I didn't sleep after that. I started watching, paying attention to the details. The way she would wear a different perfume when she left the house. The receipt from a restaurant downtown I found in the trash for 2 people on a Tuesday when she said she was at a doctor's appointment. One afternoon, I was folding laundry when I found a tiny baby sock that wasn't Caleb's. It was a different brand, a different size, tucked in Rachel's purse under a receipt from the Westin Hotel in downtown Seattle. My stomach dropped. I went online and looked up the date on the receipt. Grant was out of town that weekend for a construction conference. Rachel had said she was taking Caleb to visit a friend. I remembered how she came back tired but glowing, holding Caleb like a shield. "Trip went well?" I had asked, testing her. She had smiled that Instagram smile and kissed Caleb's forehead. "Of course," she said. I kept the receipt, hiding it inside a book. Ellen gave me the one with her handwritten note on the first page. For weeks, I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that maybe it was all in my head. But every time I saw Grant holding Caleb, calling him my boy, I felt sick. I thought about Ellen, how she would have known what to do. How she would have protected me from this mess. One night, Grant came home early. I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Rachel's voice sharp. "You can't just keep throwing money at her," she hissed. "She needs to learn how to take care of herself." "She's a kid," Rachel. Grant snapped back. "She's still my responsibility. She's almost 18. She can work, she can figure it out," Rachel said. I stood in the hallway, clutching the stair rail, my heart pounding. "I'm not kicking her out," Grant said. "You promised we would start fresh," Rachel shot back. Silence, heavy and cold. I backed away before they could see me, going up to my room, shutting the door quietly. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in. They wanted me gone. They wanted to replace me with their perfect family, with their Instagram posts and matching Christmas pajamas. But I wasn't going to let them push me out without a fight, not without the truth. I started paying attention to the times Rachel left, noting the hours, the places she said she was going. I saw the way she texted during dinner, how she would smile when she saw the name flash on her screen, then quickly hide it when Grant looked up. I started planning, saving screenshots, collecting receipts, anything that would prove what I suspected. I didn't know what I would do with it yet, but I knew the day would come, the day they would try to erase me. And on that day, I would be ready. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. What would you have done if you were me? Have you ever wondered if a DNA test could destroy an entire family? I did. It started with Rachel's spa days. She would leave the house at 10 in the morning, promising to be back by noon, but she wouldn't walk through the door until almost 3. She would smell like hotel soap, not the lavender lotion she used at home, and her eyes would be bright, her smile too big. She would drop her purse on the counter, kiss Caleb on the forehead, and say, "Missed you, baby," in that sugary voice she used for her Instagram stories. But I saw the receipts. She tried to hide the ones from the Westin, from a jewelry store downtown, from expensive restaurants she claimed were lunch with friends. I started collecting them, folding them into the pages of my textbooks. Then there was Travis. Grant's younger brother Travis, who owned a landscaping business in Tacoma, started coming by more often after Caleb was born. At first I thought it was sweet an uncle wanting to help. He would bring small toys, peek into Caleb's crib saying, "Hey buddy," with a softness in his voice that didn't match the sharp edges of the tattoos on his arms. But the way Rachel's face would light up when he walked in, the way they would exchange quick glances when Grant wasn't looking, made something in me tighten. One afternoon I came home early from my shift at the bookstore. I heard Caleb giggling in the living room and peeked in to see Travis holding him, bouncing him gently while Rachel sat close, her hand resting on Travis's knee for just a moment too long. Travis looked up surprised, clearing his throat and handing Caleb back to Rachel quickly. "Hey Maddie," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't know you were home." "Yeah," I said, my eyes locking with Rachel's, who was suddenly busy adjusting Caleb's onesie. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed. Ellen's sweater pulled up to my chin, her scent long gone, but the memory still strong. I remembered how she always told me, "Don't ignore what you know is true, Madison," and I knew something was wrong. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I started with Travis. One Sunday, he came over for brunch and I offered to clean up the guest bathroom after he left. I found his hair on the sink, strands caught on the edge of the faucet. I pulled them off with a tissue, slipping them into a plastic sandwich bag. Next was Grant. That was easy. His hairbrush was in the drawer next to the sink, a few strands caught in the bristles. I pulled them out, careful not to take too many. Caleb was the hardest. Rachel was protective of him, always hovering, always watching. But one afternoon she set his bottle down on the coffee table while she took a call outside. I picked it up, seeing the small smear of saliva on the nipple, and carefully wiped it with a cotton swab, sealing it in a separate bag. That evening I hid the bags in a shoebox under my bed, feeling my heart pound every time I heard a door open. The next day, I skipped my study group, taking the bus across town to a private lab that didn't ask many questions. The building was small, tucked between a pawn shop and a nail salon, the sign above the door reading, "Jen Shore Testing." A woman in her 50s with tired eyes looked at me from behind the counter. "What are you testing for, honey?" she asked. "Paternity," I said, my voice shaking. She nodded, taking the bags from me, labeling them with small stickers. "Results will be ready in about 2 weeks." "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the receipt she handed back to me. I left the lab, the Seattle rain hitting my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, the clouds heavy and low. I felt like I couldn't breathe, the weight of what I had done pressing down on my chest. That night, I tucked the receipt inside To Kill a Mockingbird, the copy Ellen gave me, the one with her handwriting on the first page. I promised myself I wouldn't open the results unless I truly needed to. I didn't know it then, but that day would come sooner than I could have imagined. For 2 weeks, every time the phone rang, my stomach dropped. I would check the caller ID, half hoping, half terrified that it would be the lab. At school, I couldn't focus. Words on textbook pages blurred together, the numbers on my calculus quiz meant nothing. Harper noticed. "You okay?" she whispered during lunch, peeling the label off her water bottle. "Yeah," I lied, staring at the hallway where couples laughed and lockers slammed shut. At night, I would lie in bed, the shoebox under my bed heavy, with Secrets, the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, resting on my nightstand. Ellen's handwriting, a comfort and a warning. I kept replaying every moment in my head. The way Rachel's eyes darted when Travis texted. The way Travis held Caleb, his hand cupping the back of his head gently like he was holding something precious. One afternoon, Rachel left for another spa appointment. I watched from my bedroom window as she pulled out of the driveway, the taillights fading into the gray Seattle drizzle. I glanced at the clock. She would be gone for hours. Downstairs, Grant was in his office, the door closed, the sound of his typing drifting into the hallway. Caleb was napping in his crib. I slipped into Rachel and Grant's room, the air smelling like Rachel's perfume, a sharp floral scent that made me nauseous now. I opened the drawer on her nightstand, careful not to make noise, and found her phone charger, lip balm, and a small black box tucked in the back. I opened it to find a gold bracelet, delicate and expensive, with a tiny T engraved on the clasp. "Travis." I snapped the box shut, my hands shaking. I put it back exactly as I found it and backed out of the room, closing the door softly. I went back to my room, pacing, trying to decide what to do. I could confront Rachel, but she would lie. I could tell Grant, but he wouldn't believe me. I needed the truth, something undeniable. The call came on a Thursday after school. I was in my room pretending to read when my phone buzzed. "Hi, is this Madison?" The woman's voice was calm, professional. "Yes," I said, my voice small. "This is Linda from Gensure Testing. Your results are ready for pickup." "Thank you," I managed before hanging up, my hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. That night I barely slept. I woke up before dawn, pulling on my jacket, sliding the receipt into my pocket. I told Grant I was going to the library for a study session, and he didn't look up from his coffee. I took the bus across town, the sky heavy with rain clouds, the streets wet and shining under the streetlights. I walked into Gensure, the bell over the door ringing, and Linda handed me a sealed envelope. "Take care, honey," she said, her eyes kind. I nodded, clutching the envelope to my chest as I stepped back into the rain. I got on the bus, the envelope in my lap, my thumb running along the edge, feeling the weight of it. I thought about opening it right there, tearing it open, reading the truth I had fought so hard to find. But I didn't. I went home, walked up to my room, and locked the door. I took To Kill a Mockingbird off the shelf, sliding the envelope between the pages, closing the book carefully. I placed it back on the nightstand, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at it. I promised myself I wouldn't open it unless I had no choice. Unless the day came when I needed to protect myself with the truth. And I didn't know it then, but that day would be my graduation day. The day Grant chose to cut me off in front of the entire town. The day he would regret ever underestimating me. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Graduation day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but they turned it into a battlefield. I stood in the hallway of Lincoln High, lined up with the other seniors in our navy caps and gowns, the smell of flowers and hairspray hanging in the air. My hands shook as I held the edge of my gown, smoothing the wrinkles that wouldn't go away no matter how many times I tried. Through the gym doors, I could hear the crowd settling, the chatter and laughter of families echoing off the walls. The marching band was finishing their warm-up, and the drumline pounded a rhythm that matched the beat of my heart. I peeked through the crack in the doors, scanning the rows of folding chairs. I found them easily. Grant sat in the fourth row, wearing his pressed gray suit tie perfectly straight. Rachel sat next to him, Caleb on her lap, a small blue body around his chubby neck. Rachel's lips were painted in that bright shade she wore for Instagram photos, her smile, wide eyes darting around to see who was watching. When she saw me looking, she lifted her hand in a small wave, her fake smile stretching even wider. I pulled back, pressing my back against the cinderblock wall, taking a deep breath. I reached into the inside pocket of my gown, feeling the envelope tucked safely there, the one I had pulled from To Kill a Mockingbird the night before, the seal broken, the truth inside already burned into my mind. I didn't want to use it. But I would if I had to. A teacher clapped her hands, telling us it was time. The line began to move, seniors whispering to each other, fixing caps, adjusting tassels. I stepped forward, my shoes squeaking on the gym floor as we walked in. The lights were bright, making the faces in the crowd blur, but I kept my eyes forward, counting my steps, breathing in and out. I found my seat in the front row, folding my gown under me as I sat, clutching the folder the school had given us for our diplomas. The principal spoke first, thanking parents and teachers, his voice echoing too loud through the speakers. My mind drifted, the words blurring together. I thought about NYU, about the acceptance letter I had hidden under my mattress for weeks before showing Grant. How he had nodded once, saying, "We'll talk about costs later." Later never came. He knew I was counting on him, that his promise to help was the only reason I accepted the spot. I had worked so hard, believing I was earning something, that if I was perfect enough, I would be worthy of the promise. But promises meant nothing to Grant. Names were called, families cheered, balloons bounced against the ceiling, flashbulbs popped. I clapped for my classmates, forcing a small smile each time. Then I heard it. Madison Whitaker. I stood, my legs stiff, my knees shaking, but I kept moving, my eyes fixed on the stage. The applause was polite, a few cheers from classmates, but I could feel the tension in the air. Halfway down the aisle, it happened. Grant stood up. His voice was calm, loud enough to cut through the crowd. "She is not my daughter." The gasps rippled through the gym, a wave of whispers and shocked cries. I will not be paying for her college. Grant continued, his voice cold steady like he was reading off a business report. She has shown nothing but disrespect and entitlement. She is not my blood, and she will not get another cent from me. I stopped in the middle of the aisle, the world spinning around me, the faces of my teachers frozen in horror, Rachel's hand clamped over her mouth. Caleb beginning to cry. I felt every eye on me, every phone lifting to record, every whisper digging into my skin. And I stood there in the middle of the gym, clutching the folder to my chest, breathing in the heavy, humid air. I looked at Grant. He was waiting for me to break, to cry, to run out so he could prove his point. But I didn't. I took another step forward. Then another. Until I was standing in front of the stage, the principal looking down at me, his face pale, unsure. I turned to the microphone, my hand reaching for it, the envelope heavy in my gown pocket, the truth ready. If he wanted the truth in front of the entire town, I would give it to him. The microphone felt cold in my hand as I pulled it closer, the screech of feedback making a few people flinch. The gym was silent, the kind of silence that buzzed in your ears. I looked out at the sea of faces. Parents holding up their phones, students frozen on the stage, teachers staring with wide eyes. I found Grant's face in the fourth row, his arms crossed, jaw tight, his eyes daring me to react. I could see Rachel beside him, rocking Caleb, who was crying now, his tiny hands reaching for her necklace as she tried to hush him. Her eyes were wet, her face pale, and for once her perfect Instagram smile was gone. I took a deep breath. Thank you all for being here today, I said, my voice steady, louder than I expected. A few parents shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, unsure. I know today is supposed to be about celebrating our achievements, about our future, about family. I paused, letting the weight of the word hang in the air. But sometimes family is the people who stand by you, not the people who share your blood. Grant's mouth twitched, and he started to rise from his seat, but I held up my hand. No, I said clearly. You had your turn. He froze, sitting back down, his face red, his eyes dark with anger. I reached into the pocket of my gown, feeling the envelope crinkle under my fingers. I pulled it out slowly, holding it up so everyone could see it. This is the truth, I said, my voice echoing through the gym. The truth that some people in this room have tried to hide. Rachel made a choking sound, clutching Caleb tighter, shaking her head, mouthing, "No, please." But I kept going. For years I believed that if I was good enough, if I worked hard enough, I would earn a place in this family, I said, looking directly at Grant. That I would be worthy of love. A tear slipped down my cheek, but I wiped it away with the back of my hand. But love isn't something you should have to earn. The principal stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Madison, maybe we should." I shook him off gently, keeping my eyes on Grant. "You wanted everyone to know that I'm not your blood," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "But you forgot one thing." I opened the envelope, pulling out the DNA results, the paper shaking in my hands as I unfolded it. "You forgot that sometimes the truth you throw at others will come back to you." A hush fell over the crowd as I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might drown out my words. "Caleb," I said, my voice soft, "the boy you love, the boy you think is your son." Rachel started to cry, covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking. I looked at Grant, my eyes locking with his. "He's not your son." Gasps echoed across the gym, parents turning to each other, students pulling out their phones, recording, capturing every second. "He is your nephew," I continued, holding up the paper. "Rachel and Travis have been lying to you. To all of us." Grant's face drained of color, his mouth opening, but no sound came out. Rachel was sobbing now, holding Caleb tighter, rocking back and forth, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The room erupted into whispers, some people standing to get a better look, others pulling out their phones, already texting, already posting. I folded the paper, slipping it back into the envelope, my hands steady now. I turned back to the microphone, my eyes scanning the room, finding Harper in the crowd, her eyes wide, tears on her cheeks, but she was nodding, telling me to keep going. I looked back at Grant, who looked smaller than I had ever seen him. "You wanted to break me," I said, my voice calm. "You wanted to take away my future, my dignity in front of everyone." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "But all you did was give me the stage." And I stepped back from the microphone, the whispers and gasps filling the gym, my heart steady for the first time in a long time. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. What would you have done if you were me? Have you ever seen 400 people hold their breath at the same time I have? The paper in my hand shook, but my voice didn't as I looked out over the crowd. Parents, teachers, and students all leaned forward, phones raised, eyes wide, waiting to see if I would crumble or fight back. Grant's face was stone, but his eyes were sharp, trying to pierce me, trying to silence me. Rachel's makeup was smudged, now her lips trembling, one hand gripping Caleb's tiny arm so tight he started to fuss. Travis stood near the back wearing that casual button-down he thought made him look respectable, but I could see the sweat forming at his hairline. His eyes flicked from me to Rachel, then back to me like a trapped animal looking for an exit. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch just long enough for them to squirm. If we're sharing truths about blood, I said, my voice steady, ringing through the speakers, then I have a truth to share too. Rachel's head snapped up, her eyes wild, shaking her head. No, she whispered, but the microphone caught it and people turned to look at her. I opened the paper slowly, the crinkle of it loud in the silent gym. I read it once more just to be sure, the words burned into my brain, the numbers clear, undeniable. Caleb Whitaker is not the biological son of Grant Whitaker, I said, my voice calm, almost gentle, as if I was reading a weather report. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by stunned silence. Someone dropped their phone, the clatter loud against the gym floor. Rachel let out a strangled cry, lunging forward, her hand outstretched. Madison, please stop. But I stepped back, holding the paper out of her reach, my eyes locked on hers. Travis Whitaker, I continued, my voice never shaking, is the biological father of Caleb. A single cry, sharp and pained, tore from Rachel's throat as she fell back into her seat, her arms wrapping around Caleb, who was now crying loudly. Travis froze, his mouth opening and closing, words failing him as he looked at Grant, whose face had gone pale, his eyes empty, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. The whispers started small at first, then growing louder like a wave building before crashing. Phones were raised. Higher people were recording, some whispering, "Is this real?" while others were already typing, sending the moment out into the world. Rachel was sobbing, rocking Caleb, her tears falling onto his small head, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. Travis took a step forward, lifting his hands like he could calm the chaos, but his voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Grant, let me explain." "Don't," Grant said, his voice hollow, breaking the last piece of silence that remained. He didn't look at Travis. He didn't look at Rachel. His eyes were on me, but they weren't really seeing me. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire life collapse in front of him. I lowered the paper, folding it slowly, my hands calm, now steady, as if the truth had given me a power I had never felt before. The gym was buzzing, the tension so thick it felt like we were all breathing in smoke. I took one last look at the people who had tried to break me, who had tried to erase me, to protect their own secrets. Rachel's shoulders were shaking as she clutched Caleb to her chest. Travis was standing there helpless, his mouth still moving, trying to find words that would never come. And Grant, the man who thought he could control me, sat there destroyed in front of everyone he once wanted to impress. They wanted to bury me. But today wasn't the day they buried me. Today was the day they buried themselves. Rachel stood up so fast her chair tipped over, crashing to the floor behind her. Caleb started screaming, his cries mixing with the gasps and whispers echoing across the gym. She clutched him to her chest, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Her lips moved, but no words came out, just small broken sounds. "Grant, I can explain," she finally choked out, but her voice was drowned by the sound of someone's ringtone, a shrill reminder that the world was recording every second. Travis took a step toward Grant, his hands out, palms up, like he could hold back the disaster unfolding. "Grant, listen to me," Travis said, his voice shaking. "It's not what you think." Grant didn't look at him. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his breathing heavy, his shoulders rising and falling like each breath was a battle. For a moment, I saw him sway like he might fall, but he gripped the edge of his seat, grounding himself. Someone in the back yelled, "Holy shit, is this for real?" Another person was live streaming, narrating every moment. "You guys, I'm at Lincoln High and this girl just exposed her stepmom for cheating with her husband's brother." Rachel's tears streaked down her face as she backed away, holding Caleb tighter, his cries piercing the air, a sharp, painful sound that made a few people flinch. "Madison, please," Rachel sobbed, shaking her head. "Don't do this, please." I met her eyes, and for the first time I saw fear there. Real fear, the kind that comes when the lies finally catch up to you. "This isn't about you anymore," I said, my voice calm even as my hands trembled. Travis tried to grab Rachel's arm, but she jerked away, clutching Caleb, turning toward the exit. "Rachel, wait," Travis called, desperation in his voice. But she didn't wait. She ran. She ran down the aisle, bumping into chairs, people moving out of her way, her heels clacking against the gym floor. Caleb's cries echoed as she pushed open the doors, the heavy metal slamming shut behind her like a gunshot. Travis stood there frozen, his hands falling to his sides, his eyes darting between the doors and Grant. "Grant," he tried again, his voice breaking. Grant finally looked up, and in that moment I saw it. The anger. The betrayal. The devastation. "You," Grant whispered, his voice low, dangerous. Travis shook his head, tears filling his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen, Grant. It was a mistake." Grant stood up slowly, his chair scraping across the floor, the sound slicing through the whispers and the cries. He didn't say another word. He just walked past Travis, past the parents still filming, past the students with their mouths hanging open, and past me like I was invisible again. The doors slammed shut behind him, leaving Travis standing there alone, the whispers growing louder, people pulling out their phones, already posting, already sharing. I stood there holding the microphone, breathing hard, my heart pounding in my chest. The principal stepped up, his face pale, his hands shaking as he reached for the microphone. "Madison, maybe you should." "No," I said, stepping back, cutting him off. "We're not done." I looked around the room, taking in the faces of every person who had watched me grow up, who had watched Grant pretend to be the perfect father, while I tried to be the perfect daughter. They all saw now. They all knew. They wanted to bury me today. But instead, they buried themselves. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Overnight, the entire town knew my family's secrets. The video from graduation spread faster than I could have imagined. Someone posted it on TikTok with the caption, "Girl exposes cheating stepmom and uncle at graduation," and it hit 1 million views before midnight. YouTube channels picked it up, editing the clip with dramatic music replaying the moment I held up the DNA results again and again. Local news stations in Seattle ran segments about the scandal at Lincoln High's graduation using blurry screenshots of me at the microphone. At first, I tried to ignore it. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and sat on my bed, the quiet of my small room pressing in on me. But I couldn't ignore it when people started showing up outside the house. Reporters stood on the sidewalk holding microphones, calling out, "Madison, do you have a comment?" Neighbors slowed their cars, craning their necks to get a look, whispering behind their hands. I heard Rachel was gone within 2 days. She packed up her car in the middle of the night, Caleb strapped in the back, and disappeared. Her Instagram was wiped clean, every photo of her perfect life deleted, leaving behind a blank page. Travis lost his job by the end of the week. His boss at the landscaping company told him clients were calling saying they didn't want a homewrecker near their families. He showed up at Grant's house once, pounding on the door, begging to talk, but Grant never opened it. Grant. At first, he tried to fight back. He told everyone the test was fake, that I was lying to ruin him, that I was a bitter, ungrateful girl trying to destroy a good man's life. He hired a lawyer, sending me an email through their office demanding I retract my statements, threatening to sue me for defamation. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter shaking in my hands, but I didn't cry. I didn't run. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled out the folder I had prepared. I attached copies of the lab receipts, the notarized statements from the DNA testing center, the screenshots of Rachel's text messages with Travis, the hotel receipts, the photos I took of Rachel's car in the hotel parking lot. Time-stamped. I sent it all to his lawyer with a simple message. "These are the facts." 2 days later, I heard Grant's lawyer dropped him. Neighbors stopped waving at Grant when he walked down the street. He went to the grocery store, and people turned away from him, whispering, shaking their heads. His company, the one he built for 20 years, started losing contracts. Parents who had supported him in his city council run started pulling their donations, leaving voicemails, saying they couldn't be associated with him anymore. The last time I saw him in public, he was at the gas station standing beside his truck staring at the pump like he forgot why he was there. I watched from across the lot sitting in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding. Part of me felt sorry for him. But mostly I felt free. He wanted to bury me in shame. Instead, he buried himself in lies. And the town saw it all. But in the middle of the chaos, when I thought he would never look at me again, he came to find me. And he came with a request I never expected. It was a Tuesday evening when he showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock soft but steady as I was folding laundry on the couch. I froze, the shirt in my hands slipping onto the floor. No one came to see me without texting first. I peeked through the peephole and saw him. Grant. He looked smaller than I remembered, standing in the hallway with his hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes down, shoulders slumped. For a moment, I thought about not opening the door. I thought about letting him stand there and feel what it was like to be ignored. But I opened it. "Hi," I said, my voice careful, neutral. He looked up, and for the first time I saw how tired he looked. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper, his hair grayer, his eyes red like he hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice rough. I stepped back, letting him walk past me, the scent of rain following him into the small living room. He glanced around, taking in the second-hand couch, the small kitchen, the photos of me and Ellen on the shelf. He didn't sit down. Neither did I. We stood there, the air thick, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. "What do you want, Grant?" I asked, crossing my arms. He flinched when I said his name, but he nodded like he expected it. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. I raised an eyebrow, waiting, not letting him off that easy. "I was wrong," he continued, running a hand through his hair. "About everything. About you. About Rachel. About all of it." I stayed silent, letting him struggle with the weight of his own words. I wanted to believe the lie he said, shaking his head, because it was easier. Because it meant I didn't have to face what was really happening. He swallowed hard, looking at the floor. "I know I hurt you," he whispered. "I know I destroyed any trust you might have had in me." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my face calm. "You did," I said simply. He looked up, pain flashing across his face, but he nodded. "I deserve that," he said. "I deserve worse." I shifted the envelope from the DNA test still tucked inside the drawer by the door, a reminder of everything he tried to hide. "Why are you really here, Grant?" I asked, my voice steady. He took a deep breath, pulling something from his pocket. It was a small, worn envelope, yellowed at the edges. "I found this," he said, holding it out to me. "It was from Ellen. She wrote it for you before she passed, but I couldn't bring myself to give it to you." My breath caught as I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the rough paper. It was her handwriting. My name written in blue ink, the letters slanted the way she used to write grocery lists and notes for my lunchbox. I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't sit down. I pressed the envelope to my chest, closing my eyes for a moment. "Why now?" I asked, my voice softer but still cautious. Grant's eyes filled with tears, and he quickly wiped them away with the back of his hand. "Because I need you to know she loved you," he said, his voice breaking. "Because I need you to know that even if I was too much of a coward to show it, you were always her daughter." I looked at him, at the man who had tried to break me, who had stood in front of the entire town and tried to erase me. And now he was standing in my apartment asking for something I wasn't sure I could give. Forgiveness. He took a step back, his hands raised like he was surrendering. "I know I have no right to ask for anything," he said quietly. "But please, will you read it?" I looked down at the envelope, Ellen's handwriting soft and familiar. And I knew that whatever was inside would change everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. What would you have done if you were me? He wanted me to forgive him, but some wounds can't be healed with an apology. It was nearly midnight when I heard the knock on my apartment door. I had been sitting on the floor, textbooks open around me, trying to finish a paper for NYU while my mind replayed everything that had happened. The knock came again, softer this time. I stood slowly, walking to the door, peeking through the peephole. It was Grant. His hair was thinner, his face hollow, the lines around his mouth deeper. His shoulders looked smaller, like the weight of everything had finally crushed him. I considered not opening the door, letting him stand there in the cold New York hallway alone. But I unlocked it and opened it just enough to see him clearly. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot, dark circles under them like he hadn't slept in days. "Madison," he whispered, swallowing hard. "Can I come in?" I didn't move, keeping the door half closed between us. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. I stepped back, letting him in. He moved slowly, like every step hurt, glancing around the small studio, taking in the mismatched furniture and the faded rug I found at a thrift store. "This is nice," he said, his voice soft, almost awkward. I didn't answer. We stood in silence until he took a shaky breath, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I owe you the truth," he said, finally looking down at the floor. "I knew something was wrong with Rachel. I saw the late-night calls, the strange receipts, but I didn't want to believe it." He looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "And when you tried to tell me, I thought you were just ungrateful. That you wanted to ruin what I had left." I clenched my jaw, the anger bubbling up in my chest, remembering the way he humiliated me, the way he tore my world apart in front of everyone. "You thought I was ungrateful?" I asked, my voice rising. "After everything I did to try to earn a place in your family?" His face twisted with pain and he nodded. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I was so wrong." He wiped a tear from his cheek, looking away. "I came here to say I'm sorry," he continued. "For everything. For that day, for the years of pushing you away, for not listening." I crossed my arms, staring at him, letting the silence stretch. "I can't take back what I did," he said, his voice shaking. "But I want to make it right." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, placing it carefully on the table. "I reinstated your college fund," he said. "It's yours, all of it." I looked at the paper, but I didn't reach for it. "And I want to try," he continued, his voice small. "I want to try to be your father the way Ellen would have wanted." Hearing her name felt like a punch to the chest. I closed my eyes, remembering her voice, her soft laugh, the way she would tuck me in at night. "Ellen always said," I whispered, "that forgiveness isn't about them deserving it. It's about setting yourself free." Grant nodded slowly, tears slipping down his face. "I don't deserve it," he said, his voice breaking, "but I'm asking you anyway." I looked at him, at the man who had broken me, who now stood before me, broken himself, begging for something I wasn't sure I could give. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me, knowing that whatever I decided next would change everything. I looked him in the eye, and the decision formed in my chest, steady and clear. And I knew at that moment that the choice I made would change both of our lives forever. I could hear Ellen's voice in my head, clear and calm, reminding me that forgiveness wasn't about letting them back in. It was about letting yourself go free. I looked at Grant, standing there in my small apartment, clutching his hands together like a child, waiting for me to decide if he was worthy. He wasn't. But maybe this wasn't about him anymore. "Do you think money will fix this?" I asked, quietly nodding at the paper on the table. His eyes darted to it, then back to me, and he shook his head. "No," he whispered. "It can't. I know that." I paced toward the window, looking out at the streetlights and the empty sidewalks, the soft hum of New York at midnight buzzing in the distance. "You took everything from me," I said, my voice low. "You took my mother, you took my home, you took my dignity." He flinched at the word, but he didn't look away. "I know," he said. "And I live with that every day." I turned back to him, letting him see the tears in my eyes, but refusing to let them fall. "I can't just forget what you did to me," I said, my voice steady now. "I can't forget standing there in front of everyone as you tried to erase me." His shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked so small. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "I'm so sorry." The silence settled between us, heavy and sharp, until I took a deep breath, feeling it shatter. "But I won't carry this anger forever," I said. "Because I won't let it control me." His eyes widened, hope flickering for a moment. "I forgive you." I said the words, tasting strange, but freeing on my tongue. "Not for you. For me." Tears spilled down his cheeks, and he covered his mouth, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "I don't want your money," I continued. "I will pay for school myself. I will build my life on my own terms." He wiped his tears, nodding, trying to catch his breath. I just want you to leave me alone, I finished. He opened his mouth then closed it, pressing his lips together before nodding slowly. I understand, he said, his voice rough. I will respect that. He looked at me one last time, and for a brief moment I saw the man he could have been. The man Ellen believed he could be. He stepped toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. I'm proud of you, Madison, he whispered. Even if I never showed it. I didn't answer. He opened the door, stepping into the hallway, and closed it softly behind him. I stood there in the middle of my small apartment, the silence wrapping around me like a blanket. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I was free, or at least I was learning how to be. And I knew that tomorrow I would wake up and keep moving forward one step at a time. Because I wasn't living for his approval anymore. I was living for me. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Because what happened next would change everything again. The day I truly graduated wasn't the day I got my diploma. It was the day I told Grant, I don't need your money. I need my freedom from the past. We were standing outside a coffee shop near Washington Square Park, the trees swaying in the breeze, students laughing and moving around us, their lives full of plans and futures. He had called asking to see me one last time, and against my better judgment, I agreed. He looked healthier than the last time I saw him, but there was still a heaviness in his eyes, a tiredness that didn't go away. Madison, he started, holding out an envelope toward me. I just want to help. I know you said no, but I held up my hand, cutting him off. I told you I don't want your money, I said, my voice steady. His hand dropped, the envelope trembling slightly. I want you to have a good life, he said, his voice quiet, almost pleading. I will, I replied, meeting his eyes. But I'll build it on my own. For a moment, the wind was the only sound between us, carrying the laughter of a group of NYU students walking past, reminding me that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small piece of paper and handing it to him. What's this? He asked, frowning. It's the scholarship letter, I said, from the Adopted Youth Opportunity Fund. Full tuition, housing, and books. He looked at it, blinking, his eyes glassy. You did this, he whispered. I did, I said, nodding. And I'm going to keep doing it. A small, proud smile flickered across his face before it faded into sadness. I'm proud of you, he said softly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about him anymore. A few weeks later, I stood in front of a small group of teens in a community center in Brooklyn, telling my story for the first time. They were kids like me, adopted, fostered, tossed aside, carrying the weight of secrets and questions they were too afraid to ask. I told them about Ellen, about the day Grant tried to break me, about how standing up for myself felt like breathing for the first time. Afterward, a girl with bright eyes and a trembling smile came up to me. Thank you, she whispered, for saying it out loud. I smiled, squeezing her hand. That's how you take back your story, I said. The video from graduation kept spreading, becoming something bigger than me. People sent messages from all over telling me their stories, telling me that my courage gave them the strength to speak. I started volunteering with the support group, working with kids who felt invisible, helping them see that the truth didn't have to be something to fear. And Grant, in his own way, tried to change. He sent letters, updates about therapy. He started stories about how he was volunteering, trying to repair what he had broken. But I kept my distance, answering politely, but never letting him back in. Because I learned that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing yourself even when it was hard. And on a quiet morning, as I sat in my dorm room, the sunlight streaming through the window, I realized something. The day they tried to leave me behind was the day I found my worth. That was my real graduation. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Because if your father disowned you in front of everyone, would you stay silent or would you stand up for the truth? Let me know. Sometimes I would see Grant waiting outside the community center, sitting on a bench, a coffee in his hand, watching the door. He never came in, never tried to interrupt. He would just nod when I walked past, a quiet respect in his eyes, and then leave. One evening, as I stepped out into the cool New York air, I found him there again, standing as the streetlights flickered on. Madison, he said, his voice careful. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, waiting. I just wanted to say thank you, he said, his eyes meeting mine. For letting me try. I nodded, not saying anything, letting the silence hold everything that didn't need to be spoken. He handed me a small envelope, backing away before I could refuse it. It's just a letter, he said quickly, not money. I promise. I held it in my hand, the paper soft, his handwriting familiar from the years of permission slips and forgotten birthday cards. When I got back to my dorm, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. Madison, it began. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to call me dad again. But I want you to know I see you now. I see how strong you are, how much you've grown, and I know your mother would be proud. Thank you for teaching me what it means to stand up for the truth even when it hurts. I'm trying to be better because you showed me how. I folded it carefully, sliding it into the back of my journal, closing it with a soft breath. I didn't cry, because I had already grieved the father I wanted him to be. Now I was building a life that didn't need his approval. A month later, the community center asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser. I stood on a small stage in front of rows of donors, volunteers, and foster youth, the lights warm on my face. I told them the story. About the day I stood on a stage, terrified, shaking as I told the truth that changed everything. About how I lost everything I thought I needed only to discover I had everything I truly needed inside me. And as I spoke, I saw young faces in the crowd light up, saw shoulders straighten, saw hope flicker in eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Afterward, a boy with a shy smile came up, shifting nervously. My caseworker showed me your video, he said quietly. It made me feel like maybe I could be something. I knelt down, looking him in the eyes. You already are something, I told him. He nodded, clutching the backpack on his shoulders before running back to his foster family waiting near the door. That night, walking back to my dorm under the city lights, I felt lighter. Freer. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And I realized for the first time that graduation wasn't a single day. It was every day I chose to stand up. Every day I chose to let go of anger. Every day I chose to believe I was enough. The day they tried to throw me away was the day I found my worth. That was my true graduation. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Because your truth is your power, and it's never too late to stand up for it.